What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So even though a couple of the big names at this year's deadline have gotten traded, like JT Miller, Mikael Granlund, Marcus Pettersson, as well as off the board guys like obviously Mikko Rantanen, there are still some big names that could potentially get traded at the deadline, like Brock Nelson, Brock Besser, as well as Ivan Provorov if the Blue Jackets fall out of a playoff spot. And then in this summer, in the offseason, there's some other guys that could get moved. It's more easier to move them than considering the salary cap, like Seth Jones if the Chicago Blackhawks want to retain some money, Elias Pettersson, Dylan Cousins. So I decided to ask you guys on my Instagram, MBeyond Hockey, if you want to submit these, to send me your hypothetical, realistic mock trades in terms of this year's deadline as well as the offseason. So we're going to go through it. Let's not waste any time. Let's get into it. From Jack, John Gibson to the Edmonton Oilers for Kane, Evander Kane, and a second round pick. I think that this would be more so in the offseason. I know that you don't want to potentially have Stuart Skinner mess up a playoff run in the final year of Draisaitl and Bouchard's very, very cheap team-friendly deals. But I think Stuart Skinner, he always plays horrible the first month of the season, then he locks in. Last year in the playoffs, especially, I think the stat was from games 4 through 7, he had like a 936 or something like that, a 10-2 record. He was nuts. So I think considering Stuart Skinner, again, outside of that first month of the season, he is pretty good. He's acceptable and pretty cost controlled at $2.6 million. I'm not sure I would swing at this year's deadline on a John Gibson. Although there's no premier right-handed defenseman, I still think that they need to upgrade their defense core, especially second pair right-handed defensemen, way more than goaltending. But yeah, I think in the offseason, if Stuart Skinner maybe lets the team down a little bit, you're going to have to do something in goal. Evander Kane obviously makes around $5.2 million. So you go out, you get a John Gibson. They might have to attach a first to that as well if I'm Anaheim, considering Gibson has positive value after for multiple years maybe not having positive value because he was playing lackluster. But yeah, they're taking on Evander Kane's bad contract and giving you a good goalie. That would be a first in Evander Kane most likely, but very interesting idea. This is a really outside the box one. Once Burns retires, Seth Jones at $2.5 million retained to Carolina for a first and a solid prospect. Him at $7 million still is a little bit too much for me. If you get it down to $6 million, retaining $3.5 million, I can maybe get behind this. At $7 million, I don't even know if you're getting a first, let alone a first and a solid prospect. Because again, Seth Jones, although he eats massive minutes, has not really been that productive. I think you'd get a second and a solid prospect at $7 million. Carolina, in terms of their defense core future, I think I probably would just hold off making this. This would be a pretty solid deal for Chicago just to move off a line share of this contract. But for Carolina, I think that they have more pressing needs, like re-signing Mikko Rantanen, like getting a potential second line center, and still instead of trotting out Jesperi Kotkaniemi on the left side, they have who? Slavin, Gothis Bear, I forget. Nick Eason's definitely a right-hander, and I think Morrow's a right-hander. But yeah, they can just play Gothis Bear in that second pair role, as well as Chatfield. They also have as well. I'm sure pretty locked up for a couple years. So it would be definitely an interesting deal. And I think Seth Jones could be an effective player at $6 to $7 million, but I would probably hold off it if I was Carolina. Next up, Crew Guard says Brock Nelson for Cole Perfetti. I would do this in a second. Not really realistic at all. Perfetti's 22, 23 years old, putting up like 45, 50 point pace in around 15 minutes a night. He's still viewed as somewhat of a key piece of the Winnipeg Jets' future. Yeah, this would be a slam dunk for my New York Islanders. Brock Nelson, who has been struggling this year, hasn't even been that much better than Cole Perfetti. And again, that's an expiring guy versus a 22, 23-year-old. I think more realistically, we're looking at a first and a third round pick for Brock Nelson. Maybe if it was Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri, some kind of trade, half retained for both, for Cole Perfetti and a second round pick and some salary cap filler. That's how you get Cole Perfetti. You give them both of those guys to truly, truly go all in. But just for Brock Nelson, I don't think that that's nearly enough, even if they were to re-sign Brock Nelson. Next up, we got this from, I'm assuming that's like he was going for Arizona 06. Marner for Keller plus a first. I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I would do Keller for Marner straight up because of the contracts. Obviously, Mitch Marner's a far better player, but Clayton Keller still has 3 more years after this at $7.1 million. Meanwhile, Mitch Marner's going to get a $13.5 probably million deal at 8 years. So yeah, from that angle, I don't know if I would do it. If it was just a straight up swap, I can definitely see the logic. If it was just Marner for Keller, Toronto maybe downgrades in talent, but gets like $6 million in cap space. Utah gets a true superstar. I like Clayton Keller a lot. Most likely, definitely a number 2 on a Stanley Cup caliber team, not the best forward on a Stanley Cup caliber team. So yeah, I think maybe just a straight up swap could make sense for both parties, but adding that first round pick, especially for Utah, where their first round pick, there's no guarantee, even if they get Marner, that they're going to be like a safe playoff team. Not worth it, in my opinion. Next up from Brett McMurray, Dylan Cousins to the Sharks for the Dallas first-round pick that they got for Granlund and a future second-round pick. And yeah, I tweeted it out last night. Dylan Cousins is a guy, and this actually inspired that. Dylan Cousins is a guy that a week ago, I would not want anybody really to touch unless you were like a really desperate team like my New York Islanders, something like that. If you were the San Jose Sharks, don't touch that. That's a bad contract. But now that the cap is rising like 50% more than we thought year over year, I think Dylan Cousins becomes a lot more enticing as a buy low kind of candidate for a team like the San Jose Sharks that probably aren't even winning for another 2 to 3 years. A reclamation project of Dylan Cousins could make a lot of sense. You might have to kick him out to wing, but this is a guy, again, that put up 31 goals, 37 assists, 68 points at 21 years old. I believe that maybe not that caliber of player, like a 30 and 40 guy is still in there. Surely a 60-point guy can be there. And in 3 to 4 years, $7.1 million is really not going to be that much. So he signed long-term and will be making low-end second-line money by the end of that. Could be interesting. I don't know if they would have to give up an additional second-round pick as well. I think the 27th overall pick makes decent sense for both parties. Buffalo just gets the cap space and kind of gets them move off him, and they have a bunch of young forwards that are going to need more ice time. I think that would be a pretty solid deal for both parties. Next up, Dobson for Hage, a first, and Josh Anderson. If the Islanders were intent on blowing it up, if Lou Lamoriello was out of there this offseason, and they say, we're going to do a heavy retool rebuild, I think this would be an awesome return. Hage is far outperforming. Where was he selected? Like 21st, 22nd. He has been an absolute stud this year at Michigan, one of the best players in college hockey, point blank period, such a dynamic playmaker, as well as a first-round pick. I assume that would be either Calgary's pick this year, you're saying, or like a 2026, 2027 Montreal. Not their pick this year. That would be ridiculous. But yeah, I'd be willing to move off Noah Dobson. And for Montreal, considering Reinbacher's health is just so scary, he continuously gets hurt. Noah Dobson becomes a key right-handed defenseman that they badly need. Makes sense for both parties. But yeah, I don't think that Lou would be selling that hard. If he's trading Noah Dobson, he's getting some player back that can immediately help the team and maybe picks. Not sure he would sell that hard. Next up from Matthew M., another Montreal deal. Slavkovsky, Mailloux, Montreal's 2025 first for Pettersson and Garland. This would be nuts. This would be absolutely insane. This would have to happen this offseason because Slavkovsky's still on his ELC, not making that $7.6 million, and there'd be like $60 million going the other way. But yeah, this would be the ultimate aggressive move, not all in, but like we're ready to contend next season for Montreal in terms of getting that potential true number one center. I really like Nick Suzuki. I think he is a number one center, but more so of a low-end number one center. Very interesting. It depends, obviously, where their pick is. If their pick's top 8, I would not want them trading their first-round pick in this package. Take that high-end prospect instead of giving him to Vancouver. But yeah, this would probably be the price roughly. I mean, Slavkovsky's deal when he signed it, I thought was going to be a home run, but he has not really taken that step this season. Yeah, if you made it Calgary's pick or a later Montreal pick, I could probably get on board with it. It's just a little bit too much going the other way. Connor Garland's a very valuable piece. Let me just say that as well. $4.9 million next season. Vancouver, this wouldn't be a full nuclear blow-up deal because Slavkovsky would still be a good player, but I don't know how you sell that deal to Quinn Hughes, though, that we're getting Slavkovsky back, who maybe could be a very, very good player, elite player in 2 to 3 years, but isn't quite yet. So, yeah, they would have to had sold Besser and kind of do like a heavy retool in Vancouver for this to work. This is another outside the box one. Sam Esworthy, Roman Josi to the Avs for Sam Girard, Callum Ritchie plus picks. Would have to happen in the offseason, obviously, given the cap implications. But yeah, I mean, if Yossi's like, screw it, I want to go to a contender, I want to win now, I guess that could make sense. He has 3 years left at $9 million. Actually, I don't know how much sense that makes because Makar, if it matched up with when Makar became an unrestricted free agent, it would make sense. But I think Makar's 2 years after this, Yossi's 3. So from a money's perspective, it would be tough. It would definitely give Colorado just absolutely disgusting offensive potential. But I don't know if I love the idea of Roman Josi coming in and being your second offensive defenseman, playing second power play. You're not really getting the full use out of Roman Josi. I think he should go to more of a team that maybe has more so of a defensive number one guy. But yeah, that would be crazy, an in-division trade like that. Next up, Kadri at 15% for Casey Middlestat. 50% might be a little bit too steep from the Calgary Flames. That's $3.5 million to like 2029. But yeah, I'm trying to think. I think if you added a pick, maybe Middlestat and a second round pick for Kadri at 35-40%. I think the Flames maybe bite on that because they can maybe rehabilitate Casey Middlestat and eventually trade him or be part of their core. But yeah, for the Colorado Avalanche, that'd be pretty funny. Them getting Kadri yet again at a reasonable $5-ish million. That would potentially solve their second line center problem, even though Kadri has kind of regressed a little bit. Another Colorado deal. Brad Marchand to Colorado for Casey Middlestat, a first, Olesen, Middleton in a third. So basically Middlestat in a first for 50% of Marchand at this deadline. This would be a deadline move considering Marchand is an expiring guy. Yeah, I think that'd be a pretty solid return for Boston. They get a guy that, again, you can maybe rehabilitate. He might honestly walk in and beat Boston, even with how bad he's playing, Boston's #1 center in no time. And you get a first-round pick. It would be devastating, obviously, to trade him. But the Marchand, McKinnon, Nova Scotia connection might kind of lead to something potentially. And if Boston falls out of a playoff spot and it just continues to play bad, you might be trading Brad Marchand, considering he might want some 4 to 5 year deal that takes him into his late 30s. He's already into his late 30s, almost to his 40s. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Brad Marchand, but I think that would be a pretty solid return in terms of doing some kind of retool. You could trade that first round pick for more of an impact guy. Makes sense for both parties. The New York Islanders, Matthew Barzal and Noah Dobson for Elias Pettersson and Carson Soucy. I love how he puts the C. I thought it was the defenseman, Elias Pettersson on the Vancouver Canucks, but I don't know if I would do this, man. I'm going to be honest. Matt Barzal, although the points really weren't sticking out, I think he was playing some of the best hockey of his career when he was healthy this season. I don't know if it's worth it, considering he makes $2.5 million less than Pettersson, as well as trading Noah Dobson to take on Pettersson, who is kind of a reclamation project. He's not playing as bad as Dylan Cousins right now, but he's not even worth $11.6 million. A Barzal for Pettersson swap, sure, I'd be willing to do that. I'd take the risk on Pettersson, but adding Noah Dobson, who I'm not that high on, but definitely does have value, I don't know if I exactly would be willing to do that. Another older future Hall of Fame defenseman heading to a contender in the Central Division, Erik Karlsson to Dallas at 50% retention, Ilya Lyubushkin, Emil Hemming, a 2026 first and a 2025 fifth. If I was Pittsburgh, I personally would do that. If ownership's willing to retain on Erik Karlsson to get him down to what, $5 million for the Dallas Stars, yeah, I'd be willing to do that. Take on that first. Emil Hemming was a first-round pick last year. Not exactly killing it in the OHL, but still a valuable prospect. Dallas, that is definitely enticing. They obviously need right-handed defensemen, but I don't really think they need right-handed offensive defensemen, if that makes sense. I think they have enough with Miro Heiskanen and Thomas Harley. I almost just said Tomas. He is born in America, raised in Canada, not Tomas Harley. Thomas Harley. I'm thinking Tomas Hurdle. But yeah, I don't know if I would spend that many assets on getting Erik Karlsson. I know that's awesome at $5 million, but even still, he's only playing like a $6 to $7 million guy right now. He's 33, 34 years old. I don't think Erik Karlsson's the guy that you make that splashy kind of trade, especially when you already traded your first round pick this year. Then you're trading another one. Keep them. Maybe trade the 2026 guy to get a guy that more so fits your core. Pittsburgh tried to go all in on Erik Karlsson, and granted, they didn't get the same retention to a degree, but that ended up being a disaster. I would not be betting on Erik Karlsson too much. Him and a Heiskanen pair would be nuts. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, I think that their assets could be used better, and in terms of extending the window, instead of this would more so close it with a guy like Erik Karlsson or risk of closing it. I'd stay away if I was Dallas. We got some Brandt Clark deals, considering he got healthy scratched once Doughty got back. Brandt Clark for Stankoven, sticking with Dallas. I see the logic here. I definitely see the logic here. When you look at the LA Kings, they have Doughty. They have Jordan Spence, who has been better than Brandt Clark. He's older than Brandt Clark, though. Maybe you think, let's get a young forward for Brandt Clark, Stankoven, inject him into our lineup, considering Byfield really hasn't been that good this season. Not saying Byfield out of the lineup, but I'm saying, like, get another young forward to add to that core. I would not sell if I was the LA Kings, though. Considering Doughty is 34 years old at this point, I think turning 35, I think that would be very short-sighted. I like Logan Stankoven a lot, but I personally would definitely have Brandt Clark over Logan Stankoven. Doughty's going to be out of there in 3 to 4 years, or at least Brandt Clark's going to take over for him, at least as the second or first pair guy in 2 to 3 years. So don't sell that's not even selling so low. Don't get me wrong. I like Stankoven a lot, but do not sell low on Brandt Clark to that degree. If I was Dallas, yeah, I probably would do this, considering you have young-ish forwards already, like Wyatt Johnston, Jason Robertson, Hintz. And on the right side, you don't really have that much right now, so I would definitely do this if I was Dallas. But if I was LA, chill. Do not rush this just because he's getting scratched right now. I don't think that he should be getting scratched, but don't overreact. Another Brandt Clark deal. Similar line of reasoning here. Raquel in a second for Brant Clark. If the LA Kings really think that right now they are truly a Ricard Raquel away from winning the Stanley Cup, maybe you do this. I don't think that that is exactly the case. Them potentially winning a Stanley Cup is going to hinge on Doughty still being elite, Brant Clark rising up and being elite, and them having two damn good defensemen as well as Jordan Spence. I do not. This would be selling very low. Stankoven, you at least could sell me as a guy that can be a consistent 60 to 70 point first liner. Again, Raquel, who's on a very team friendly deal with the way that he's playing this season, and you're getting a second round pick. Still, no, I would probably stay away. And then we're gonna finish it off with the Detroit one. Andrew Kopp, Dmitry Buchnilikov, a 2025 first or second for Besser. Let's say it's a second because Buchnilikov is playing amazing right now in the KHL. A 2022 second round pick, putting up like near Ivan Demidov production. He's on a worse team and playing more, so it kind of evens out. But he's been a monster. I get the logic here for Detroit. You're moving off the Cop deal and you're getting Besser, but I would not attach Buchnikov. He's too good of an asset. And again, it's not like you're Brock Besser away from winning a Stanley Cup right now, but it's definitely a creative trade to potentially get them off that contract. If I was Vancouver, yeah, I probably would do this for Besser. I think that Buchnikov in a second is worth more than a potential first that you would get for Brock Besser, and taking on Cop would definitely stink. But if you're trading Besser, you don't really care about the rest of the season, and next year you're probably not contending at a high level. Definitely an interesting trade. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about these 15 trades that I went through? Drop some of them below. Again, could be deadline deals, could be off-season deals. I'll be seeing the next one. I'll be seeing in the comments reacting to your trades. Peace.